Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Today's talk is called Our Way Back to Source Consciousness, and I chose the title for a reason, and that reason is that during my shamanic vision quest, if any of you know, have read my book, my goal or my reason for being on this planet as told by source consciousness or by these beings that I saw, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment, was to show everybody the way back to source consciousness. So that's why I chose that title for today's show, Our Way Back to Source Consciousness. Now, this has to do with the global awakening that's going on. This has to do with the spiritual awakening that's happening, the political uprisings that are happening. All of this is leading us back to our source consciousness. We're beginning to get that feeling, that inkling, that stirring inside of us, which is motivating us, it's guiding us, it's becoming the catalyst of a lot that's happening in today's world, in my humble opinion. I will say, you know, I'm sure people are saying, what do you mean going back to source consciousness? Source has never left us, and I couldn't agree more. I believe that we are the ones that have left the source consciousness, and there's a reason for that. But let me tell you a little bit about my journey, and I like to share this every year or so, a little bit about what happened to me, why I do what I do, what experience did I have that led me to do the work that I'm doing today. And I'm going to do a condensed version because I want to talk about what happened after and what's happening now, and so many other subtopics that need to be spoken of in this short hour. So let me go in and jump right in. Back in 1992, for those of you that have not read my book, by the way, my book is called The Book of One, Returning to Source Consciousness, and yes, it's available on Amazon. But in the book, I do describe a little bit about my experience, and I'm just going to jump to the part of the visionary aspect of what happened. As I mentioned earlier, I did plan a shamanic vision quest. I took the medicine, quote unquote, and began to feel a strange sensation like I was dying. Quite honestly, it felt like I was dying. And I resisted it. It was very scary. And, you know, looking back now, I see it was really the death of my ego, even though it was for a short amount of time. But it was the death of my identity that I was experiencing. And it really, really scared me. And finally, it got so intense that I let go. And when I let go, it was like something, like a vacuum or something just sucked me up out of my body. And I could see myself floating above my room. I went through the ceiling. I could look down on my house, and I saw the house that I was living in at the time. And it was very, very strange because I saw these beings, these entities, trying to get into the house, and I can only best describe them as the Wizard of Oz flying monkeys. They were these nasty looking, dark winged looking creatures. I don't want to say they were demonic. They probably looked more like mischievous elementals or something. If those of you know what I'm talking about. But they were trying to get in, and apparently the um, the work that we did to create the space was keeping them out. In my humble opinion, that's what I got out of it. And as I was rising above, I kept getting up higher and higher and higher. And you'll notice that a lot of my work that I do now, the meditation work I do, is very similar to that. The guided meditations that I do, I kind of will take you through that getting higher experience because that's kind of what I felt. And just like in my meditations, that's what I saw. I saw myself leaving the earth. I could see the earth below me. I kept rising higher and higher and higher, and then I saw myself in a, for lack of a better term, a craft. And I don't know, to this day, I've come to believe, I don't quite understand, but I have come to believe that it was some type of interdimensional craft, perhaps. There were other beings there, there were beings of light there, and began, they were all looking at the center of this craft, and as in the center of the craft, they could see, or we could see, the planet. And they were directing me to focus on different parts of the planet. Now, I'm going to explain something technologically, but you need to understand that we didn't have Google Maps back then. But that's what it looked like to me. They would direct me to, let's say, China, and it was like there was like a zooming effect, and we'd zoom in on China, and we'd see all the overpopulation, and we'd see all the pollution, and we'd see all the destruction of the natural resources because there were so many people concentrated in one area. Um, then they pulled me back up, and we went back down to another area, and we saw drought, we saw poverty, we saw, I think it was Africa, the continent of Africa that I was seeing. Then they brought me back up, and they brought me back down to the United States, and it seemed like it was like New York or Chicago, and the emphasis was like on the greed and how it looked like, businessmen walking over homeless people and just, ignoring the world around them, just, making money, making money, making money. So they kept taking me to different parts of the planets. They showed me war. I saw people getting, bombed and missiles and the destruction of property and whatnot. And so it was almost as if everything that was, I don't want to say wrong with the planet, but what we were doing that was not in alignment with our highest good. Because the next thing that I experienced was I was being pulled out of that craft that I'm explaining, that I'm describing here. And I was pulled into this big golden ball of light. And in that golden ball of light, once I was in it, it was like being in I want to say a cloud, but it was much brighter than that. Yes, there were boundaries. I could still see below me. I could see the earth. It was almost like, and I describe it as a lava lamp effect, like a blob of lava, and being inside that golden lava. And inside that golden lava, it was very peaceful. It was very loving. I felt very connected with everything. I felt just such an incredible amount of love and compassion and just really, I can't say it enough, an intense, intense feeling of love and well-beingness, and everything was fine, and I was completely immersed in this energy. And from this energy, I saw, again, going back to that lava lamp comparison, little blobs of the golden orb that I was in, kind of like pulling away again, like a lava lamp, a little ball of golden orb blob lava would peel away and it would go down to the earth. And I'd see more and more of them going down into the earth, and I saw them actually going all around the universe, but my focus was on the earth. And then I'd see the golden balls coming back up to this main golden orb of love light, love lava lamp light. And I got it. I was like, oh, these are uh, the souls or the consciousness pulling away from the source consciousness. And these were the balls that, represented us incarnating on the planet. And when we leave the planet, we come back to the source. And I didn't want to leave. I did not want to leave. And I could feel myself being pulled, back, away from this ball of light. And I was like, no, this is perfect. This is love. This is, I want to stay here. I want to stay here. And it was a very feminine voice. A woman's voice said to me, you must go back and teach them the way back to source. And within an instant, it was like I was dropped from the ceiling and landed on the couch that I was laying in, and my consciousness was right back in sitting on that couch in that home, in the living room of that home. And I immediately began to start taking notes of what I saw, what I felt. There was a connection. There was still a connection to that voice. And that voice was giving me, I wanted to call them riddles. I want to call them riddles. And as I was figuring them out, I would write it down, or I would write down their riddle. And that's kind of what my book became. And if you read the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's these very intense but simplistic spiritual messages, and some of them have a bit of a riddle attached to them. And this went on for days. This went on for days, and I just kept jotting, jotting, and jotting. And this connection really was an amazing time in my life, and it only lasted a few days. After that, things started getting back to normal. And what I mean by that is I was a very successful person in the beauty industry and the fashion industry, making, lots of money. I was very young. I was 24, 25, and I wanted to be 24 and 25. I didn't want to have all this knowledge that was imparted onto me. And I was almost keeping it separate, and I did keep it separate. I didn't want to live what I had learned. I knew what I had learned. I knew what I was. I knew what we were, what we are, we as, consciousness incarnate in human bodies. I knew it, and I couldn't deny what I knew, but yet my ego, I guess when you're that young, your ego is so darn strong. My ego wanted to continue this successful path, this path of, monetary success and social popularity and looking young and beautiful and being with young and beautiful people and dating young and beautiful people and all these things. Not that there's, that's a negative thing, but that's what my focus was at that time in my life. That's what I wanted to separate myself from what I had learned, and that caused a lot of upheaval. I will say, created a lot of, for lack of a better term, mental imbalance issues, emotional imbalance issues, not wanting to embrace the truth. Created a lot of what I now call cognitive dissonance in my life, which manifested itself in very negative ways, whether it be like drug abuse or out of control ego, et cetera, being just being a self-centered, egotistical, little, what. And so it created a lot of issues in my life. And luckily, over the years, going back now to, oh, what was it, 2003, 2004, the second wave came through, and I don't know how that happened or why that happened. It seems to be about the time that most of this modern 21st century global shift that we're seeing started happening, and started happening for more and more people. Perhaps maybe it was the internet that made it easier for us to connect or get to know that we were not the only ones who had gone through this type of experience. But that's when I began to embrace my role, and when I began to embrace the truth that was presented to me from spirit, from source. And long story short of it, again, it's all in the book. Is that I was lucky to meet a woman that helped me get this book out and reconnect with those beings. I began to allow them to channel through me, literally using my voice, or their voice actually, allowing them to come into my body and speak through me, which I found to be very uncomfortable, and I kind of stopped it shortly after the book was done. But that connection's always there. I can still feel them. I know when they're around. I know they're always around. It's just a matter of me tuning in. Sometimes I don't have the choice, and they will tune in spontaneously and start sending me all this imagery and information. But again, it goes back to that connection to higher self, and that's the whole message that I was given, is that as we reconnect with our higher selves, uh, on using multiple methods or many methods, and we'll cover a few today. As we are reconnecting with our higher selves, that what I call higher self is that piece, is that little piece of the golden orb, that came down to incarnate. We, in my book, I say we are all part of one main soul. We are one main soul. We're just different pieces of it that incarnate to have different perception and different consciousness and different experience. But we are all a part of that one soul, the source, if that's what you want to call it, the one. And what happened though, this was a little different because during that time, it was after 9/11, and we, the whole psyche of the planet was rocked. It was shocked. It was rocked. What we call those in service to self, the elite, the global elite, whatever you want to call it, the Illuminati, the New World Order, et cetera, those that are in service to self, began to manipulate a lot of our reality. And there was a huge consciousness ripple around the planet at that time. And I feel that because of that, there was, as they say in physics, everything has an equal and opposite reaction. And when that ripple came out, I believe that many of us were kind of the internal dialogue was kind of shaken awake. We were shook to our core, and those of us who were ready to blossom or have already had that quote unquote connection forming, I believe that's when we began to kind of like snap out of it again. It's like, oh well, this is insane. What is happening on the planet? This is insane. What's happening in the United States, and to see this, stirred something in me of what I call my geopolitical awakening. And that geopolitical awakening, yes, I have to include Ron Paul in that. I have to include the Ron Paul movement revolution. I have to include what was it, that Aaron, I want to say Aaron Schwartz. Yes, I believe that's his name. That movie that he did, that was a great flick. That was very much a part of it for me. Um, and going down all those different rabbit holes. And I found myself becoming very vigilant as to what I allowed my senses to be exposed to. And I feel that's a part of it. You know, we want to begin to understand. We finally get the, you know, we remove the wool from our eyes, so to speak. We're getting the clarity, so we want to kind of be in control of our consciousness, and I feel that's a part of the of this process, of this way back to source. Being vigilant as to what we expose our senses to. I had thrown out my TV at that time. I stopped listening to commercial radio. This is before Pandora. So there was no choice back then. Um, I was very, very much becoming a bit of a hermit. I didn't want to be in large crowds where I couldn't control my environment, so to speak. And again, I wanted to be in control of what my focus was on, what I'm focusing on. I didn't want to be distracted from my work. And I became very vigilant. And I know many of us do. We don't watch corporate television. We don't listen to corporate radio, which is great. I still don't. Thank goodness now for things like Netflix and Pandora. We don't have to listen to that commercial programming, literally. But getting vigilant, and to the point, though, where I had lost, I'd become a bit jaded in the sense that I really didn't trust anyone. And getting to that place where, you know, calling people sheeple, which is not very nice now looking back, but boy, I was the king of calling everyone sheeple. You don't get it. You don't get it. You drank the Kool-Aid. You're asleep. You're asleep. Instead of having compassion for them because they haven't been stirred, you know, having some empathy, some understanding that, in Spanish we have this term pobrecito, you know, "Oh, you poor little thing, you know." Instead of looking at them like the child that hasn't awoken, I became angry and I became vigilant, and I only wanted to be around people that were thinking the same way I was thinking, which leads to groupthink all over again if you think about it. Um, Becoming vigilant was making me angry. It was a part of me that, you know, I know was very necessary, but I feel if I could go back and do it again, I would have worked more on compassion and balancing what I knew in my heart, that this is all an illusion, that we are merely pieces of source, of that main soul that were incarnated to be here at this time to expand the awareness and the consciousness of the planet and to be the example of love and compassion. So, for those of you that may be going through this point in your journey on your way back to source, being vigilant is one thing, and I do agree. I love the story that I believe it's Ram Dass who says that, you know, when the tree is young, you put a fence around it so the sheep don't trample it. Once the tree has grown, it will provide shade for many. So I can relate to that, and I do believe there is a moment of cocooning, but once that cocooning is over, I ask you all to know that it doesn't last forever. This feeling that you can't trust anyone, this feeling that people are stupid, this feeling of, you know, this has to change tomorrow. And we're going to get into the cosmic timeline after the break. But embracing the compassion that's needed to continue the work here on this planet, that's needed to continue the work internally, that's needed in order for us to remain in attunement with our higher selves so that we ourselves have the ability to connect back to our source consciousness. And again, it all comes back to understanding the idea that we are all a part of source consciousness. There really is no separation except that which we perceive and we create or that we believe and create this idea, this belief structure that, believe it or not, we've been conditioned to believe over the millennia. But when I say understanding the cosmic timeline, let me say that, as many of us know, when we are in true alignment with our higher self, when we are in true alignment with Source, there really is no time and space. If we are here on the planet in a linear, logical, 3.5 dimensional timeline. Now, on this 3.5 dimensional timeline, we get this inkling, this stirring inside of us of how things need to change, of how, just like what was being described, and the Earth needs our help today, that, war has to end today, that corruption has to end today, that we need to make choices and take action today. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now, the idea that it has to all change and be perfect today is where we get into what I call the egoic dysfunction of all of this. For if we were to say, let's say we wake up tomorrow and all the elites are gone, the New World Order, the Illuminati, the self-serving dark lighter, you know, people that are destroying the planet and humanity and oppressing humanity all disappeared, what would it look like? We would still have ego. We would still have anger. We would still have division from what we had learned in the past. Anyone who feels that I can't wait for this, this has to happen tomorrow, why can't we do this today? It doesn't work that way. We have to prepare humanity for this. We must be prepared individually for this release, this freedom. What good is the idea of living in a planet of harmony when there's disharmony within us? What good is it of living on a planet without war when we ourselves are still at war with ourselves, with our neighbors, with our, religions and whatnot? It doesn't work that way. Yes, we need to change the outside, but we must also change the inside. So if we are to understand what is happening, if we are to approach this on a cosmic timeline, in this time and space, on the 3.5D dimension, we must understand that we are getting there. We are at that place where changes are happening internally, where changes are happening externally. We're seeing it. We see the uprisings. We see the countries saying they've had enough with the global bankers. We're seeing that's laying down the foundation. Now, what's going to happen on the inside? What are we going to do as spiritually, politically, geopolitically aware beings evolving? Where are we going to go with this? Where are we moving with this? And I go back to working on the inside in order to connect with our higher self, in order to return to our source consciousness. What does source consciousness look like? If anyone has ever had one of these moments, whether it be in meditation, whether it be a near-death experience, whether it be a psychedelic experience, a spontaneous experience, you know, and you have felt it. You know it is unity. It is a unity consciousness. It is not based in ego. It is based from heart. It is not in the brain. It's not in the mind. It is based in the heart. It is a heart consciousness that allows us to feel the connection with every living thing on the planet, not just people, not just the animals, not just the people in our family or the ones that we love, not just the plants and the water. We feel a connection to all life. We feel the connection to the creative force. We feel the connection of source moving through everything because it is moving through everything. If we look at some of the old ancient, perhaps Eastern philosophy. It's been explained time and time again. We see it in the mystery schools. We see it in everything. Unfortunately, we don't see it in stateism. We don't see it in nationalism. We don't see it in organized religion, but we are feeling it, and we have felt it. We have felt unity consciousness. We have felt heart based awareness. We have felt compassion. And this is what is going to allow us to evolve to that place that we are all so hard and working and trying and taking action to create a better world, to create a better self, and to create a better life for everyone, not just for you, your family, your country. This is not only global, this is cosmic. This we've when we are in unity consciousness, we understand that what happens, to your left arm happens to your right arm. When we're in unity consciousness, we understand that what happens in Texas happens in Paris, France, not Paris, Texas. We understand that everything is affected. We are connected by a net, so to speak, of energy, a grid of energy. We are energetic beings. We are connected by the web of life, not to make a cliche, but it makes a perfect description, a visible description of what we're talking about here. So as we're moving through this, and as we begin to accept that unity consciousness, as we begin to work from our heart center and begin to connect with others through our heart center, we're still human beings. We are still human beings on a 3.5D planet that is evolving, and we are going to feel that push and that pull, the push and the pull of our spiritual evolution. We're going to have moments of clarity where we feel that unity, where we feel that connection, and we're going to have moments when we've allowed ourselves to get caught up in divisive action and divisive scenarios that have really been thrust upon us. Um, I see it so much within myself when as you know, this is what I do. This is my work: unity consciousness, love, compassion, and the awakening, elevating human consciousness. But then there's that political side of me that will get all caught up in the divisive nonsense that is thrust upon me by media, Facebook, corporate news, angry, uh, conservative neighbors, angry liberal neighbors, whatever it may be. And yes, of course, I feel myself being pulled into that a little bit. But I always remember it's an illusion. The illusion of separateness is exactly that. The illusion of divisiveness is exactly that. At any moment, you have the choice, I have the choice to say, I will not participate in this. I call them the anger games, like the Hunger Games. Well, these are the anger games. I'm going to be angry at that race, or I'm going to be angry at that news station, or I'm going to be angry at that radio station, or I'm going to be angry at that newscaster or talk show host or Facebook page, and it's the anger games. Who can we be angry at next for screwing all this up? When in reality, we're not angry at them. We're angry at ourselves for not being at peace, for allowing ourselves to be manipulated once again, being pulled into that divisive behavior because we already know better. And when we already know better and we backslide, we're going to get angry. And instead of blaming ourselves, we're going to blame, Alex Jones or Obama or, somebody else because we have lost that core sense of heart unity consciousness. Our bodies are always talking to us. Our bodies expand or constrict. When we are in alignment with our work, when we are in alignment with our higher self, when we are in alignment with our true source consciousness, we are very expansive, we are very happy, we are very relaxed. And when we pull away from that, when we come off center, our bodies begin to constrict, our muscles get tight, our teeth begin to grind, our heart begins to race. And, you know, tell me if I'm crazy to say this, but I believe we are not here to live in a constricted, tight muscled, teeth clenching, heart palpitating body. If anything, that tells me what I don't want to be. I don't want to be heart, teeth clenching, muscle, clenching, heart palpitating, feeling anger. What joy is there in that? And the joy of being right over somebody else is momentary. It passes. So we are going to feel the push and pull, and just be aware of it. You're being pulled. Okay, I'm being pulled. Yeah, let me spout off a little something, and then I'm going to go back to my peace. I'm going to go back to my center. And that is where our way back to source consciousness lives. It lives in our center. It lives beyond ego. It transcends the ego. It transcends the injustices of the planet. It transcends our minutia detail of being uncomfortable day to day. I'm going through that myself today. I haven't had the opportunity to, buy my lunch meat for the week, and it's aggravating because of the weather outside, And yes, I understand it doesn't matter, but yeah, sure, I'm frustrated. Sure, I'm a little aggravated. I'm allowed to be, and so are you. But to know the priority, to have the proper priority to say that that's minutia. It's a minutia detail of our day-to-day life that distracts us from our center. Finding our center, living in our center, and I describe it many times like being in the middle of a tornado, and you're in the tornado, in the center of the tornado, kind of like the eye of a hurricane. It's calm, it's peaceful, and all around you the world is going crazy. All around you the storms are brewing and the wind is pulling you, and every once in a while you might, stick your arm up a little bit too far and get sucked back into that storm. But you can always go back to that center, that eye, that place of peace, that place of connection to your higher self, and continue to develop your relationship with your source consciousness. Developing your source consciousness through living through heart awareness, living through unity consciousness, understanding and accepting. And it's very funny. People get very angry at that word acceptance. Having acceptance is not giving up. Okay, let me make that very clear. When you are living in acceptance of all there is, of what is happening, yes, horrible things are happening on the planet. Yes, our planet's being destroyed. Yes, we've got self-serving, capitalistic madmen running the planet. But are they? When we accept what's going on around us, we have the ability to step away and observe. And I'm not saying we have to continue to let it happen, but we have to accept that it is right now, this moment. This is the way it is right at this moment. What can we do about the next moment? What can we do about the next moment? So when I say to live in acceptance, it means seeing the world for what it truly is, not resisting what's happening. There's an old saying that says, that which you resist persists. Stop resisting that this is happening. Start accepting it's happening, and in a place of peace and from your center, with the understanding of your heart consciousness, of your unity consciousness, you begin to move forward. and moving forward into creating a world where that does not exist. The more attention we give something, the more life we give to it. And I understand that, yes, we must expose corruption. We must expose the wrongdoings of the planet because some people don't know. Some people do not know. I agree. I continue to do that myself. I consider myself an activist, and I'm more than happy to expose corruption and to expose the problems that are going on with the planet. But the thing is, I have learned over the years not to make it personal. That corruption is not personally attacking me, it's attacking humanity, but it's not attacking me personally. I still get to wake up, I still get to do my work, I still get to live where I live and do what I do, and the sun still, rises, life still goes on, but I can change it. I can change it by the way that I interact with other people. I can change it by talking about it on the show. I can change it by accepting it for what it is and saying, okay, look at this mess. Do you want to live like this? Do you want to continue living like this? Well, if you don't want to continue living like this, let's do something about it. Let's, stop giving our money to Walmart. Let's stop voting for corrupt politicians. Let's stop consuming and using materials that are destroying the planet. Stop spending money and giving money to those that don't care about the planet, that don't care about humanity. Supporting the system as it is. My activism is turning my back on the system. My activism is turning my focus within myself. My activism is not giving the system any more power than it already has. My activism is in creating something new, creating something different, creating something new and different within me, a different understanding of the planet, a different understanding of society, a different understanding of how I see myself on this planet, a different understanding of how I see everybody, everything, every bit of life bursting forth around the planet, and having a connection with all of that. So as we begin to find our center, we learn that reacting is not necessarily in the best interest of ourselves. We learn that reacting is not in the best interest of those around us and our families. We see it many, many times. People argue over the silliest things because they react. They don't take that moment to stay in their center and come up with a positive solution. As we stay in our center, we begin to proact. We begin to create. We become creators. We become developers of new ways of thinking, developers of new ways to live. Many beautiful, inspiring projects have begun from people living in their center, whether it be your neighborhood co-op, whether it be fair housing through a private a charity or something. It's all done from the heart center. It's done because we are connected to our higher self and we are connected to our source consciousness. Find your center, find your way back to source consciousness, and act from there. We have it within us. It has always been a part of who we are. And remember, if your body is constricting, if you're feeling anger, that is a sign that you are off center, and we must learn to go back and to work from our center, from our source, because we've always been there and it's always been with us. Thank you. With that being said, we have just a moment left on the show. I can't believe I didn't go over time. I want to let you all know that next week we have a wonderful guest joining us, Garnet Schulhauser. Very interesting story. He was approached by a homeless man on the street who turned out to be a spirit. Wasn't even a real human being. This spirit gave him tons of information from the other side. So we are going to be speaking with him about revelations from the spirit realm. Very fascinating story, and that'll be here next week on the Just Bernard Show. And of course, for those of you that don't know, I am offering spiritual coaching and counseling and healing and intuitive readings. If you would like, just go to bernardalvarez.com to learn more about that and to learn more about the work that I'm doing here on the planet to help evolve our consciousness. Have a wonderful week, everyone.